What is up, goaltenders and goaltending fans? Welcome to the Net Perspective from the-rink.com, where we talk about all things goaltending. After quite a hiatus, actually about a year-long hiatus, this is episode 4. We're looking a little bit different this time. I am Jeff Osborne, gatekeeper, as some of you might know me as, and Puck and Hustle on all the social media. Over in that other window over there is my goaltending buddy, Pete Fricano. Hi, Pete. How you doing?
Hey, Jeff.
Between us, we have over 50 years of playing and coaching experience in the crease. We may be right, we may be right, we may be wrong, but we will give you an honest perspective of the least understood position, maybe in all of sports. So, let's get off the ground real quick. Pete, first of all, I want to explain to people. I started this with my friend Jeremy Dutch Burton. He got very busy. I love you, Burton. There's no hard feelings or anything like that. He just got busy, had another child, and we just had a hard time syncing up. We may even actually have him come on, later down the road and chat with us. But, being that I've been a goalie for a long time, I've played hockey for a long time, Pete, you could kind of give a little bit of the story about how we met, but I've known you for quite a long time.
Yeah, my guess is somewhere about 30 years. I kind of was thinking of time frame, and I want to say it was around 92, 93, 93, 94, right in there, right? So I think the way we really met was through mutual friends of ours, right? So at the time, my buddy Kevin Slanicky and Timmy Marotic, they both worked over at Westgate Country Club. And I think they used to bicker back and forth about, playing street hockey and ice hockey and so forth. And so you need to help me out with this a little bit. So you guys had a team that played deck hockey that went to Nationals at Pittsburgh, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and you guys you won the tournament?
No, we didn't win. We were pretty bad back then, but we were probably one of the better teams in the area, in the Chicagoland area at that time. And you and I were still teenagers, but the guys we were playing with were older than us. And by the way, I was not playing goalie, but go ahead.
But then, so I think there was some bicker back and forth with, hey, we play, because we used to play at Kevin's house in Oaklawn. We'd play in the back alley. There was a slab, and it's really how I kind of started really playing, because it was at best, 12 foot by 12 foot. And the nets were literally 12 foot away from each other. So you're getting some fast shots and you had to keep moving. And so they were going back and forth saying, hey, well, we get this team and we played here and it was who's better, whatever. And then we finally played you guys. And we won. I think we did a 2 out of 3 and I think we won both of them. And but that was the first actual meeting, and then that kind of segued into the boys field hockey over with Chicago Ridge and over there off 111th Street.
Yeah, for those who don't know, we're both from the Chicago area, probably the southwest suburb area. If you couldn't tell by my accent, and probably a little bit of Pete's accent, he's a little bit further southwest, actually almost directly south right now, like way south. But yeah, so we're from the Chicagoland area. We will talk about everything, but we're Chicago south.
Yeah, I moved out of the great state of Illinois and moved to about as far south side as you could be, and just outside of New Orleans in Louisiana. So that's where I'm at. So you talk about, and I mean, if I look straight up I-55, I can pretty much see you guys. So it works out that way. But it was funny because I started talking about, I was thinking a lot about the boys field hockey, and that was, I met you, I met your brother, I met we had the tryout, which I think was interesting. And I was telling my wife, I said, I remember we did breakaways and all kinds of stuff. And I don't think I let a ball past me, like, at all. It was just one of those days where it was just great. And I think, if I recall, I don't remember which the order was, but me and your brother were like 1 and 2 drafted. And
Probably.
we got traded for each other, like just right before the season started. Which brings us all the way to, that was 94, 95. And that was a lot of fun. We played a lot of people you still know, like Phil King, and that was your goalie. So we played against you guys. You were the
Yeah,
assistant coach, right?
you're like a year younger than me, and my brother's 3 years younger than me. So you were kind of more in with my brother. I was kind of in with the
Right.
older crew. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but you were the assistant coach. So, and
yeah.
you coached the Canadians, which, so as I was going through my record, I was looking, and me and Phil, we were 1-2 in the league as far as goaltending and I look and I've got the stats.
I can't
So
believe
the
you would
reason,
have that.
so what I wanted to say was, look what I have.
Okay, you have one that I have older, and actually one that's older than that from 1987.
But
But
that's the
yeah,
so I
it
looked
still
and I found
stands.
that today. Yeah, so just real quick, like Phil was oh Lord. So I was 11-6-1. Phil was 12-4-2. I gave up 40. He gave up 39. I had a 2.22 goals against. He had a 2.17. We both had 3 shutouts. However, we blew through the playoffs. We beat you guys in the championships. I remember stoning your brother quite a few times. So
He
we won
probably led
eight
the
to
league in
one.
scoring.
He did actually,
Yeah.
and then you had Wade Krause and Jimmy Maurer right behind him,
Hmm.
who I think Jimmy Maurer actually might be watching tonight. To be honest,
Really? I was going to
yeah,
say
really, yeah.
none of these people are watching right now, so no one's
Yeah,
going to know
no.
who any of these people are.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, so I wound up winning. I wound up taking that. So in the playoffs, I had 4 games, 6 goals against with a 1.50 goals against. And then we had the night where we had the awards night, and I mopped up. So it was one of those things where I got a whole bunch of trophies to bring back here. But in a nutshell, that's kind of how we met.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and it was interesting because that was a league. It was like a park district league, pretty much. For those who don't know, it's called Southwest Ball Hockey now. It's not called what it was, but that's fine. I mean, I still know and talk to a lot of people from that league. And that's how I grew up learning to play hockey. That's how my son grew up learning to play hockey. I actually mentored many goalies through that league. I coached for years where I had to evaluate talent, and had to pick tournament teams, and we had to take them to Pennsylvania. And of course, I was the goalie guy, even though both coaches at the time were ex goalies. I was the goalie guy. So my old friend Pat Stankus, he always gives me shit about how I didn't pick him for the A team one time, and but it is what it is. You gotta pick who you think fits best with the team. Not always the best player, because they're not always the same thing. But so that's kind of my credential. Kind of like we started playing in the same place. Pete, you played more ice hockey than I did growing up.
Mhm.
But then I got into ice hockey as I got a little older because I couldn't. Parents really couldn't afford to get me ice hockey equipment, so I learned on deck hockey. Then I moved over to ice, and then roller, and then back and forth between roller and ice. You were kind of more in ice, and then you came to deck hockey, and then you kind of went back into ice maybe, and then a little into roller hockey, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of how you went.
yeah. Yeah, and that was the great thing about where we were, right? We could throw a rock and hit an ice rink in any direction. There were times that I had games with the ball hockey over on 111th, and I just came out of a practice and I just went from right one to the next. And it was like, well, my gear's wet, but hey, whatever. It's cold outside and it's middle of winter and stuff's frozen, and let's just play. And my hair's crunching and ice is coming off of it. But yeah, so yeah, I started with the ice. I mean, I started really playing floor hockey because I think we all do. You got to get
Yeah.
your fundamentals somewhere, and then that's the most ideal. And then it was funny because I never thought I'd be playing ice hockey. I always had feet problems as a kid. I was born with club feet, and I guess putting skates on and playing hockey was never thought, right? And I was able to do it, and I loved it. It was more with my buddies were all doing it, and I already knew how to play, but let's try to up the ante. And man, it kind of hit the ground running, so to speak, with it.
And it really, and the thing about it with you is we, as a group, me and my friends, we all grew up playing kind of the same kids. The teams were only so big. There were only 4 teams in each division, and you had the minors, juniors, seniors, and so you always played against the same kids. They just threw them all in a pool and they split them up differently every year. But you were always playing kind of with and against the same kids. You and Mr. O'Boyle came swooping in late.
Yeah, we did.
We were like, who are these ice hockey guys that are coming in here and trying to play on our turf? And as it turns out, you guys end up being, you guys were really good players, which annoyed us even more because you were probably the best goalie in the league, just coming in first thing. And O'Boyle was, right up there as one of the top defensemen in the league. Like, to say we were a little salty that you guys came in and kind of showed us up a little bit is to put it mildly. But all these years later, we're still friends. I mean, it's still funny to talk about, though.
Yeah, and O'Boyle is funny because he always reminded me of Fulton from Mighty Ducks. So he was like, the 1-for-7, he'd hit that net, but the kid had a rocket. He could run. He was a soccer player, so he could run. And his stamina was great. The kid could fly. And then we just in that league we just happened to have a really good group of guys and girls, because there were a lot of girls in the league too, if you remember. And we had I remember we had Bobby on our team, and Christy Battles was on there, and so we had some girls mixed in here and there.
Actually,
and
that league,
they were good too.
That league, 2 of the girls that I played with or coached with were on Team USA for the deck hockey team.
Yeah, so I mean,
they were that good. They played with the men, and they kicked their asses too.
I always tell people that the Chicagoland area has such a hockey hotbed. It always was. You get your Catholic League, you've got the Metro North, you've got some of the teams toward Joliet and Plainfield and things like that, like Providence, and so you've got a really good cluster of players, and a lot of guys in the NHL. I mean, we can always throw Chris Chelios out there from Mount Carmel, so things of that nature. So
yeah, that was back in the day. That was all back in the day when that was happening. Now, nowadays, where you have like Mission out of Chicago, there's so much. There's so many kids that they're pushing into the National Development Program through the Mission program, and Team Illinois and all the AAA teams in here, and some of the Central States teams. There's a lot of kids. There's a lot of good hockey players. There's some that I've seen playing against my son that I'm like, I could imagine seeing that kid in the NHL someday because they're that good,
Yeah. I mean, and growing up, so we had the Chicago Young Americans, and you had Chicago Hawks, you had St. Jude Express, Joliet Jaguars was another travel team. So I mean, you only had that kind of, and Hawks and St. Jude were the big two.
Well, there was Huskies too, but yeah,
and then Huskies, right, that's right. And but now, I mean, there's so much. It's like
there is.
Back in those late '90s, and it's to date ourselves, right? I mean, the late '90s, you really had a lot of opportunity, but now that it's kind of like there's so many fish in the pond now.
Yeah,
the pond back there was a pond. Yeah, now you've got an ocean, but
yes,
that's the evolution. And I remember, actually, I was watching one of your other episodes. I don't remember which one it was, but you were talking about when they used to flood the water retention area over there off of 111, kind of off of 111th past the overpass. We used to go over there and skate all the time too. That was a great little kind of hidden gem place to go play some pond hockey. So I mean, we always found somewhere to play.
And back in that day, like if you knew somebody who played ice hockey, you were like, oh boy, they have to be rich, right? Because
you're not half off though. I mean, it was like, man,
yeah, that was my thing is I didn't really start playing goalie until I was like 11, 12-ish. So like I kind of missed the boat on all that. If I would have like known that if I started playing goalie early on, I could have got half off of hockey. I might have been able to talk my parents into it, but it is what it is.
Of course.
Like I wasn't going anywhere anyway. No one's drafted a 5'6" goalie from Chicago.
Not anymore. No.
They weren't back then either. Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, even at 5'9", 5'10", but I mean, it was one of those things where, it was a fun time, man. We had some really good groups of people that we played with, and like even with me, I know, and you too. We talk to those people still today, and 30, almost 40 years later, in some
Yeah,
cases,
yeah,
that we still,
yeah.
and that says a lot for today. You know, a lot of people just don't have that. And
Right,
hockey
right,
is one
right.
of those things that bring you together like that. So it's, and even this position too. How did I become a goalie? I have no idea, but I took to it.
I could tell you how I became the goalie. I was the only kid in the neighborhood who was dumb enough to stand in front of people taking slap shots. Now, granted, this was street hockey. We were not using a hard ball; it was a soft ball. But still, I was out there playing without a mask on, and
Yeah.
my dad we found some goalie pads somewhere at a flea market or something like that. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be the goalie, I mean, I was always a goalie nerd, like gear nerd. I'm
Hmm.
still I'm a gear nerd. But like, all my stuff has to match or it drives me insane. And
I,
I
I
was
hear
back
you.
the same way back then. Like I wanted to play the position that had the cool gear. Like when I was playing baseball, I was the fastest kid on the team, but I wanted to be a catcher because you got to wear all the cool gear. And
Yeah.
then when hockey came around, I'm like goalie masks. I mean, look at the goalie masks. What sport where you get to wear something that's like unique, and you get to use your personality to design it, and nobody gets to do that in any other sport in any other position, really. I mean, of the major sports, you don't get to do that. So like
No.
that's why I wanted to be a goalie. I'm not going to say I was a great goalie. I was okay. I was pretty serviceable. I was a left-handed goalie. Left-handed goalies are few and far between,
Shifty.
and yeah. So
Very
like
shifty.
I parlayed into, a nice men's league career. I
Hmm.
played, for the Miha roller hockey, which is, pretty decent level hockey for roller hockey, and did some tournaments and stuff like that. And I held my own. That's all you can ask for, is that I held my own. I never thought that I was going to be some kind of superstar goalie anywhere, but as long as I could hold my own, people ask me to come out and play. I'm pretty happy with that, and they keep asking me to come out and play. As of late, I've been getting hurt more than I've been playing. So,
Kind of at that age, man. We're kind of
yeah,
at
yeah,
that age.
yeah, for sure.
It's I do want us to keep playing,
Yeah,
but it's real hard for me because they have to be it has to be, I started playing inline again down here, and we put together a couple inline travel teams, and we have to play out of state. We have to play just outside of Atlanta and Nashville and outside of Dallas, and we've been to Vegas and things like that. And you're playing some really high competitive stuff when you don't have a practice facility. It's pretty tough,
yeah,
and we just don't have it. You're basically resting on your laurels. At least I was. So it's
yeah,
like one of those. It always reminded me of back in school. It's like, oh, I'm not going to study for the test. I figure if I know it, I know it, and that's how it is. But now, as your body gets older, you may know it, but your body's like, I don't remember any of this. What are you doing? My center of
yeah,
gravity's completely changed. The
yeah,
playing style's changed.
yeah,
I was still using my old gear. I had to buy new gear. And I'm like, and I have no muscle memory. It's like, okay, what do we do now with this?
yeah.
I don't
That
know. What do we
was
do?
actually, I had a terrible problem switching from like oldish gear
Hmm.
to the newer style gear, because I'm not traditionally a butterfly goalie. I
Hmm.
mean, I guess nowadays you would consider it a hybrid, because I can
Hmm.
play a little bit kind of a butterfly, but like I can't come anywhere close to a true butterfly goalie. I just can't. I don't have the flexibility. I don't have the size. Like I just have to do what I can to keep the puck out of the net, and that's how us old guys are now. We just do what we can to keep the puck out of the net, and
Yeah.
there's nothing sexy or pretty about any of it, because
You know,
I am
when
ugly
we
out there on the rink.
you're like flounder, you're like a flounder. See,
I'm
but that's
ugly
the
off
thing.
the rink and I'm ugly on the rink.
So you're a two-way goalie. Is really what you are. I mean, we were the way we had to play to become a butterfly goalie back then was a forced butterfly. Patrick Waugh really helped develop that forced butterfly. You had to make your pads do that. They didn't do them for you like they do now. I call them butterfly for dummies. It's like you drop, you're in a butterfly. Everybody does it. That's why the newer playing style is okay. And when I say newer, I mean I'm talking from that division, from the vintage type players to now, to where it's everybody's doing the same thing. There's no creativity. There's no, to me, there's no, it's a very vanilla style.
Yeah, it is.
And it's like, meh, it's like, okay. Oh, he did the butterfly, so did he, and he did it's the RVH, and it's just like, I don't, whatever. It's personal preference, I suppose.
Yeah, and
But
it's they're trying to understand the position. They're trying to be able to teach it to kids. They're
yeah,
trying to explain it's not, rather than just, hey, kid, go out there and don't let a puck past you.
yeah,
They want
like
to
we
give
did.
them something that they could practice. They want to give them a routine. They want them to treat every shot the same way, and it's trying to give some kind of standard, some kind of template to the position.
Hmm.
And I'm with you. Like, even when my son, he isn't a goalie. He's tried to play goalie, and he did all right. But because he's watched his dad his entire life, so he was able to at least get the basics down. But that being said, I don't want him to tear his hips up in his knees like I did, and that's fine because he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be his own player and everything. But him playing out there, like, it's shown me a whole new world of what's going on in this, with the position and the kids. And, I said this before on like our previous episodes and stuff. As far as goaltending goes, it's getting better, but there's not a lot of instruction out there for young ice hockey goalies. The only instruction you get is if, you pay the big money to go to a big camp. Back in our day was Darren McCluskey. He's still kicking around somewhere. He's coaching it over at the Fury. But Darren McCluskey, remember, that was like, if you could afford to go to a Darren McCluskey camp, like, that was the best thing ever. And now, even now, it's still like they throw the kids out there and they go to these camps and then they show up to practice and it's like, all right, just go stop the puck, kid. There's not really any more, the organizations are trying to have like goalie camps and stuff like that, but like, it's one kid or two kids per team. And if you got an organization like where we play, it's got 16 different teams. How can you have enough goalie coaches for 16 different teams? You can't. You can't even have it for maybe, a third of those teams. They have goalie people that work with them and stuff like that, but they need more. We need more. We need more instruction for these kids, because forcing these kids to, their parents and everything, you have to spend a ton of money on gear for these kids. And granted, it's not as much as like what I would pay or you would pay. It's half of or less than, but it's still a lot of money to play hockey and then have to pay to play in whatever league you're in and stuff like that. And then you got to pay on top of that. You got to go to some kind of specialty, like, whatever, Goalie Inc. or whatever. And Goalie Inc. is great. Like, we have friends who have gone through the Goalie Inc. program and they've turned out great, but just like, you have to go through that program to get to that level sometime. Or you have to just play with your natural talents, like probably what you did when you started. It was just your natural ability. You didn't probably go to a whole lot of goalie camps until maybe a little later on, but if the kid doesn't step in and he's kind of good or kind of knows what he's doing or can kind of figure it out right away, your only path is to work through these camps and spend a lot more money. I would like to see it like if you play, travel hockey with the Hawks or Vikings or the Fury or whatever program it is in this area, that they had, more goaltending coaches to help out, even during practices.
Yeah, the position, I guess, has gone by the wayside because you don't have the excuse me, enough people to help these kids out. So yeah, like you're right. You get two kids here, two kids here, two kids here. How do you can't see? I remember when I played. I was on a public league team. Now, but we did play Catholic league team. We played. Oh geez, I mean, we played like Willowbrook and Naperville North, Naperville Central. Those teams like that out in the other conferences, District 230, and we had a goalie coach come in a couple times, Ollie Green, and he taught us some specific things. But it's like, all right, what are you really doing for your goalies other than, all right, guys, just shoot on them. I mean, okay, do some skating drills. You're not doing the technical. They don't have that time. And getting to Darren McCluskey. Yes, I did go to Darren McCluskey camp, and that was
I know you did. That's why I brought him up.
So I like Darren. I like Darren. So that was over in the studio rink at Southwest Ice Arena. And once again, I really do like him. He was such an ass. He really was. But there's a reason for that. It's like a goalie boot camp. I mean, you're there to go to the next level or to learn something you don't know. So I wanted to go. So this is probably my junior year and a senior year, maybe. And I really kind of wanted to play for the Springfield Junior Blues. At the time, my grandparents and cousins all lived in Springfield. I'm like, this is perfect. I go down there, and I did great during his camp. And I remember telling the guys, he's like, "Hey, Fricano wants to go play for the Springfield Junior Blues. What do you think?" And they're like, "Yeah, I probably can." Like, oh, do up downs. I'm like, okay, well, I just got everybody in trouble. Thanks. That's great. But he had great techniques and stuff. As a matter of fact, what helped me out too was, since I was such good friends with Kevin, their coach took a liking to me too for Marist. So Marist allowed me to go to a lot of their dry land or off ice stuff. I did a lot of stuff in parks with them, or I would go, and it was just extra practice for me. Well, all it's going to do is benefit me, and I can hone in on what I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those things where I guess I kind of taught myself or mimicked whatever we saw on television, because at that time, so Eddie Belfour's coming through. We had a really interesting goaltending core coming through Chicago at the time. And Dominic Hasek came through, but I mean,
we're gonna get into this. We're gonna get into this.
We will.
This is gonna be our next segment.
So what I was thinking was funny, because the goalies, when I was literally just started playing, you had Alain Chevrier. So we're going back.
Jocelyn Cloutier.
You had Cloutier. You're right. Jacques Cloutier with his Aeroflex pads.
Yeah.
Greg Millen. And Darren Pang was still kind of coming through. So Darren Pang was on my first ever Blackhawks poster. And I'm like, man, he had the coolest helmet. I love the helmet. He was fast. He had that fast glove, and it was like something that you're like, that's kind of what got me hooked to the position. Was like, holy cow, the flair. But I had really good hand-eye coordination because I was a baseball player, so I can glove. I always had a good glove hand because I could see it. And same thing with my defenseman. It's like, well, do you want me to take the shooter? Do you want me to take the passer? What do you like? Look, here's the deal. If I could see it, I'll stop it. So cheat. Just cheat, kind of play between the two, and whatever happens. We'll figure it out. But Jimmy Waite, Eddie Belfour, and yada yada yada. Yes, Dominic Hasek, who we know was a hidden gem, and those type of things. So I mean, even going back to I went to the Blackhawks fantasy camps. Those are the photos you have over my shoulders. I mean, I did that for a couple of years. I couldn't have played hockey without my parents and their support. And obviously, my dad running a business helped to supply the equipment, the ability for me to actually go out and play. And that's something I want to touch on with you. Do you remember what your first set of equipment was and where you got it?
Yes, 100%. Because it's part of it's part of my origin story.
Of course.
So, we played the ball hockey and stuff, and they had the Milek pads and all that stuff. But I never had my own set of those. But my dad was a flea market goer, and on Saturdays and Sundays, every weekend, he would go to the flea market, the Double Drive-In, and he'd go to the Sheridan Drive-In, and he'd go to the real flea markets, not the Swaparama.
Not the Swaparama?
No. These were flea markets like everybody's having a garage sale at a local drive-in theater. I know kids nowadays are not going to get any of these references, but that's what it was. You would fill up your truck with all your crap out of your garage.
That's serious. That's a serious.
You would go to a drive-in. You would get an area, a spot, and you would all sit out there. So my dad, knowing that I was interested in playing goalie, came up on some guy who probably cleaned out his basement or whatever, and had an old pair of the brown deer hair pads.
Yes.
Cooper brown deer hair pads, and like anybody who doesn't know what that kind of stuff is worth, my dad was like, "How much you want for these?" And he's probably like $8.
Yeah,
And I
right.
was like, "But So not only did he buy that, but he got me a pair of the old Cooper blocker and glove, ice hockey versions of them. But he didn't know he didn't know the difference between a full right goalie and a regular goalie. So I grew
Yeah.
up playing baseball, catching with my left hand and throwing with my right arm. Well, my dad bought me left-handed equipment, and I'm kind of ambidextrous. So I started wearing my glove on my other hand, and I started playing that way because it was easier for me to shoot that way as well. Because I shot my dominant side.
Sure, sure.
So I taught myself at 8 years old how to play goalie full right, and I've been full right ever since. That was my first set of equipment.
That's crazy, crazy, crazy. Well, it's funny because I wrote down what my first set of equipment was and where, but then when you said about the brown pads, I had to take a step back because so my first set of equipment was a hand-me-down from Kevin's brother Keith, who had just got a brand new pair of Vaughn pads and everything, and then he had the old brown Coopers, which I inherited, Cooper chest protector, the waffle board with the yellow circles. Which then morphed into I wound up getting a white Cooper, the GM12, which is still at my parents' house. I had the brown Cooper glove, and I think my parents got that. Okay, let's see if you like it. I got my skates from Play It Again Sports. So then
I got mine from the pro shop in Southwest Ice Arena. They were used goalie skates that I bought from there.
So I'll get to that because my first actual brand new set was at the end of my freshman year, and I got black and white Vaughn Legacy everything complete deal, the Andy Moog setup, which I'm piece of that equipment here right now, which I still used up until recently. I even used it when I played in 2020 in Vegas, and the guys were like,
I had a set of those same.
"How are you playing with that?"
Yeah, I had a set. I had
love
a set
them.
of those.
Just absolutely love them. I just love them, and got my skates from Gunzo's, but the pads and everything I got from SA Unlimited, which was that closet across the street from Southwest Ice Arena. It had so much gear in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it was like it just if you pulled the wrong thing, I think you would have had an avalanche and you'd have probably died. And it was amazing. And the other place we could have bought stuff like we talked about not too long ago was Saint Spectrum upstairs by Willie and Nancy. And but they had more so sticks and things like that. But as far as gear, that was like that or Gunzo's. That's where you were going.
Yeah.
So that was
sure.
that was my first set of gear. Yeah, I still want to play with it. I still love playing with that stuff.
Well, now that we've gotten kind of into the background of you and I, we've rattled on for a half hour and probably put everyone to sleep.
Yeah.
I thought until we start, Pete's doing a great job of going out there. We got a bunch of guests we're going to be pulling in at different times, local goalies, minor league goalies, maybe some pro goalies, maybe some, other reps and things like that. This should really be great for all you goalies out there. We should have a lot of stuff that we can. But before we get to that, I wanted to have an episode where you kind of get to know us. A lot of you kind of know me, but the goalie part, people don't always know about the goalie part of it. And Pete, you're new to this crowd. You're not new to the crowd, down by you. They know you pretty well down there. But so I figured we would give a little bit of our personality. Let's play a little bit of it's not really a game. It's kind of more just a back and forth. I thought that, let's give people an idea of, what inspired us when we were growing up, players that inspired us growing up. So I thought, well, how about if we take and we give our favorite 5 goalies? They don't have to be the best goalies. They could have maybe only played one game in the NHL, but the 5 favorite guys that we had from growing up. And, what inspired us to be goalies and got us where we are today. So we're going to put this list together, and we might even sneak a couple in that we hate. So there are some out there. I mean, people who know me, I'm not branded as the hater for nothing. There's a lot of hating that I do out there. So We're going to work our way backwards. We'll start at number 5. I'll go first, and
Yeah.
and then you go, and then we'll alternate back and forth. I when I was putting this list together, I could have put a ton of guys on here, and part of this, I mean, is yes, we're from Chicago. Like I saw mostly Chicago goalies, but I number 5 on my list. I'm going to go with, and this is going to explain some other things as well when I get to that. But number 5 on my list was Nikolai Habibulin. I was a huge fan of the Blackhawks bringing Habibulin in. He had just won a cup with the Lightning. He was Russian. You know, even back then, you kind of knew that, like, anyone who was trained by Tretiak knew what they were doing. And these Russian goalies would come in, and they were pretty good. You know, they were like machines. They were like Russian machine. And Habibulin, I loved his style. He wasn't truly like a butterfly guy. He was kind of out there, kind of wild and crazy. But he was good. He was really good. And when he came to the Hawks, I was really happy. So Habibulin, my number 5 is Nikolai Habibulin. Pete, take it away with your number 5.
Hobby, man. Wow, let's see. It was such a tough class back then. And this is more toward the end, I suppose. I'd say Marty Brodeur is number 5. Which is interesting because now he's probably in the top 3. Well, top 5 all time, right?
Yeah. I mean, these are only our top 5. You know,
right.
Sure,
but
yeah.
To see where they all land, right? Because even today, I looked at somebody Bleacher Report's top 100, and I was very surprised to look at where mine sat. I'm like, there's no way. You talk about a dispute, and that's going to be a story for another day too.
Well, it's a Bleacher Report, so there you go.
Oh my God! Well, yeah, I mean. They couldn't get me into the hockey sporting news because I didn't subscribe, so whatever. But hey, that being said, Marty Brodeur, I mean, he started off kind of slow, but I mean, I tell you what, it was one of those things where you watched him evolve, and he was a kind of a silent assassin though for New Jersey. They didn't have a great team, but he was so solid. I think they started building a defense around him, and you had. They started building a solid. I mean, Scott Stevens comes in and some other big boys, and then next thing you know, you got a Valerie Zelapukin and this, and they start building a team. And I think watching that style, there's pieces. So every goaltender I pull out of this top 5 are pieces of my game I pulled from theirs, and he was one where it was he was 100%. Stable, great focus. Hot kid on the scene at that time, and that was he got drafted in that 1990 class too.
Yeah, I actually my first custom blocker and glove that I got made were the Heaton, the red, white, and black Heaton set that he had. It was his. It's actually got the Brodeur like logo on there, but because it was the same color as the Blackhawks, and I loved all my stuff to be red, white, and black. His stuff matched, and it was I used that stuff for a long time, and I loved that stuff. That Heaton stuff was really good stuff.
Which one was it? The Pro 90Zs or with the Helites, or would you have?
Yeah, the Helites.
Yeah, the Helites were, and they were light.
Yeah,
those were no joke.
I didn't have the leg pads, but I did have the
blocker.
I wasn't buying the whole thing. I wasn't buying the whole set, but the blocker and glove, yeah, because I had to order them being full right as. Which is the theme of my life. I have to order all my gear because until really until the internet, until like Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that, you couldn't find lefty goalie equipment anywhere used. So you had to order it. That was your only choice was you had to order it. They didn't even have them in stores. So you had to just hope that when you put it on the wrong way, that was how you wanted it to feel when you ordered it and got it. Luckily,
because who really played left when we were growing up, right? Grant Fuhr,
Greg Millen.
Millen was
Tom Barrasso.
Yeah. Barrasso was a lefty.
I mean, okay, I know all the lefty goalies. Really. I got a soft spot for lefty goalies. So.
Yeah, but there wasn't many. It was a handful.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I honestly I didn't even realize Greg Millen was a lefty goalie until several years after he stopped playing. I was like, wait, he's lefty. I didn't even realize it. So,
yeah. Speaking of Grant Fuhr, I actually have it's for me to play a Grant Fuhr Buffalo Sabres Christian that's brand new that I don't think I've ever used it. I
Yeah,
don't even think it's taped. Yeah, I still have it. It's literally right behind me right now,
I
and
know
it's
this
yeah,
is going to end up being like a podcast of a couple old guys being like, the
yeah,
old
yeah.
equipment was wonderful, and I wish
It
it
was
was
so
still
good.
around.
There's
Yeah, because
whippersnappers now.
yeah. I mean, I
That
want a
stuff was
Curtis
good though, man.
Curve. I want a
Yeah,
Curtis Curve, and I want a Christian. I had Christian sticks too.
I
Like,
might. You
yeah,
know what? When I come back up, though, I'll have to check. I think I do have a Curtis curve at my mom and dad's house. I've got the white with the another Andy Moog style. Yeah,
my Curtis Curve was my favorite stick that I've ever had, hands down, not
they
even
were
close.
they were weird. They
All
were
right,
weird.
on to number four.
Go
All right, on to
for
number
it.
four. Here's a name even Blackhawks fans, a lot of them won't even remember. The name is Warren Skordensky.
Wow, you're going
He
old
played for the
school.
Hawks in like 83 through 85 ish. He was a third string goalie. The reason why I liked him so much was his mask. If you look up Warren Skordensky's mask, he has the same mask, and if you right here, the Hamilton Mustangs. I'm wearing the hat for it. If you remember the scene in Youngblood where the goalie at the end and he has the penalty shot, the goalie wearing that mask that he was wearing is the same mask that Warren Skordensky had. It's a skull mask. It is frightening as hell. I can't imagine at that point in time, facing somebody with a mask that looked like that, because it's one of the best masks ever. He only, like I said, he only played like a handful of games for the Hawks. Then he played for Edmonton for a couple of years, but he changed his mask at that point. But if you look it up, I actually have somewhere around here, I have a signed picture of Warren Skordensky, his mask, and it's signed. And I actually have his mask tattooed on my arm because it was so
Yeah, you
cool.
went deep.
You can see on my arm down
Yeah,
here.
you went deep with that.
Yeah, I've got. So he was really inspiring to me because of the mask. I thought the cool mask. Like he didn't do anything as far as like being a player or whatever, but his look inspired years of me being a fan of his mask. So my number four, Warren Skordensky. How about
Nice.
your number four?
Felix the Cat Potvin. I
I
liked
can go
Felix,
with that.
even though even though he was in the all that whole Campbell the Central,
Yeah.
the Central what with Norris back then, that was
Smythe
such a
division.
such,
Yeah.
yeah, it was such a scrappy division we had, but Felix is him and Jimmy Wade had some of similar glove styles. So Potvin kind of used the new. I don't know. I can't even explain. So it was kind of like you had the knees tucked in, but you had your glove out, like you were giving them the glove, like go ahead and like daring them to shoot there, and you're bringing it back to steal it. I thought that was one of the cooler stances, and it was something I eventually kind of pulled in to my game. Of course, too, he's got an iconic helmet, simple, but everybody knew what a Felix Potvin mask was. It had
Yeah.
that cat-like looking helmet, whether he be with the Maple Leafs or the other four teams he had brief stints with. I forgot
Yeah.
he was even with the Bruins.
He was with
But
the
still,
Kings too for a while.
it was with the
apparently.
Kings, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I'd say Felix the Cat, and he was quick too, though. He had the flashy glove, the big kick save.
He was good. I
yeah,
can't
he
hit
really
on
was.
any of
Paul?
these choices.
Yeah. So it's like we did grow up in such a great area. It's a great era of goaltending. In that nostalgic vintage, whatever you want to call it. It's so hard to get those five, but I think we're gonna nail it.
Well,
But yeah, that was my number four.
Yeah, and then they were unique.
Right.
Like you don't get enough. Like I love unique goalies. Like I don't mean to kind of get off on a tangent here a little bit, but like the other like a couple of years ago, I was watching Scott Wedgwood play, and I'm like, that dude is unique. He's not like every other goalie. And he may not be the best goalie out there, but he's a solid goalie. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. You can't predict how he's going to react, which sometimes nowadays, players are now learning how goalies are supposed to react because they're all taught to react the same way. And they're using it against goalies for that. So like he threw a little bit of the question, a little bit of the what's this guy going to do? I don't really know, So that's kind of like what I like about players or goalies. Like you got to be unique. You got to do your thing. You got to you got to be creative. Right? That's the thing I tell my son all the time. Be creative. Be creative. Like I'm not out here trying to hone you to be an NHLer. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here because we want to teach you, teamwork, to respect your elders, to listen to authority, to follow directions, to learn new skills, and to be creative. Like be creative. That's like the one thing that we've kind of lost nowadays. I think with goalies is the creativeness. Even a lot of the masks nowadays. And no offense to Mike Figueroa, my buddy Mike Figueroa, you're out there. I love you, buddy. And Don from Mac Masks, I love you guys. You both do a great job. But just based on how things are, especially like in the NHL, they're getting to be so generic. The masks. It's just you take a couple of things and you reshuffle them around on the mask because no one wants to really let somebody be creative. And then when someone gets creative, then they try to cancel them. So anyway, but
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we said earlier, like how I said, the goalies today are more of a vanilla position. There's no, back then, everybody had something different. They had an attitude. They had their own they were their own character. And now you're like, this guy could be, it's like buying a rubber house in a rubber stamp neighborhood, where it's like, you get drunk, you're like, shit, where do I live? I don't know. It's like, which goalie's mine? They all look the same. Oh, this one, he's 6'2" and he isn't 6'1". And back then, and that was, if you were a tall goalie, you were an oddity.
There's a guy that I didn't put on my list, but I wanted to put on my list, and it's Robin Lehner. I love Robin Lehner. He's big. He's not your traditional like skinny, rail thin goalie. He's
a 90s goalie.
Right. He's unpredictable. He's big. He was 6'3", 240. He's a huge goalie. And like on his masks, he had the logo for In Flames, which is a band that I love. I'm like, he's at least showing a little bit of personality here, And unfortunately, his career kind of went the way his career went. But like I was a big fan of Robin Lehner when he was here in Chicago. I was so happy when they signed him. I wanted them to lock him up here, and as it turns out, it's probably better they didn't lock him up here. But anyway, again, he's unique. He had that unique, personality, and that's what I like about the goalies. So
yeah.
All right, let's get on to number three. My number three, and yours is probably going to be higher than this. You're probably going to have the same person. Ed Belfour was my number three as far as favorite goalies go during my era of growing up. Ed Belfour, I loved Eddie. A lot of, even though he's not my favorite goalie, actually my stance mimics Ed Belfour very much. It's very wide and very, almost like, high elbows, glove up. Like Eddie Belfour had a very wide stance. He wasn't as, and he got pretty low too. So like if I had to describe myself to somebody and my actual stance when I'm playing, it's a lot like Belfour, which is counterproductive for me because I'm 5'7" or 5'6", and the lower I crouch, I mean, you've got everything up here to shoot at.
Top shelf all day.
Yeah. So, I have to be a little more aggressive when I do that. But Ed Belfour, like I love, you love everything about him. Almost every goalie in Chicago loves Ed Belfour. Like he was iconic, and the way he just came into the league, won all the, won the Calder, won the Jennings, won the, the Vezina, like just came out of nowhere and just took over the NHL. Was amazing for young goalies, and that was my high school years. That's like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, like. My senior year was when they went to the Cup final with Belfour and Hasek. And I will talk about Hasek at some point here. But, Ed Belfour is my number three. Go with your number three.
Yeah, Eddie coming on the scene it was like me coming into ball hockey, huh?
Oh.
Was like, whoa, wait, what the hell? What is it?
Erroneous. Erroneous on both counts.
Lovely. All right, my number three. Yeah. Cujo, Curtis Joseph. I really loved Cujo's playing style. Also, again, another rival with the St. Louis Blues. Later went to Toronto, but I really liked it. So they had Curtis Joseph and Pat Jablonski I think were the two goaltenders at that time.
In St. Louis, yeah.
Yeah, and Vincent Riendo. There's
Yes.
another one I can kind of interchange.
Good old number 40.
Yeah. So, well, the reason I went to number 40 was the ball hockey. That was the first time because that's the biggest jersey number they had. So I'm like, okay. But yes, number 40. Now, Cujo just was like one of these, another one. He took up a lot of space. He played a lot bigger than he was. He was another intense competitor, and he had another great group of guys playing with him too. I mean, you had Brett Hull, Brendan Shanahan, and that list goes on and on and on. He had a bunch of brawlers.
I will never admit the Blues are any good ever. So,
I won't either. But they did have a good core around him.
At that time, how bad did we hate? How bad did we hate?
Oh, God.
The Maple Leafs, the North Stars, the Blues,
and the Red Wings.
The Red Wings. I hated every single player on all those teams.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's no way. Back then we'd have been like, oh yeah, I love it. No, you wanted death on everybody. You're like, I hope Detroit don't make it back up, I-65 or wherever they're going, or so you left that alone. All right. So, Curtis Joseph. Matter of fact, I remember I was playing in a practice scrimmage at University of Chicago's practice rink, and one of the other coaches, I don't even, might have been the Chicago Young Americans. We were playing with. He's like, "You remind me a lot of Curtis Joseph," and I'm like, and at the time it was like Eddie was my guy. I'm like, oh, thank you. So I started watching some of his stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, because that was really good to hear. That means my mechanics seemed pretty good, I guess, because he had some great mechanics. And another cool helmet, too. Another one of the very individualistic helmets that's iconic with the Cujo dog, rabid dog. So another one that expressed himself. But, yeah, Curtis Joseph, number 3.
That's my boy Burton. That was his favorite player is Cujo. So shout out to Burton. All right, that's number 3, right? Yeah. All right, So number 2. I mentioned this player a little earlier because most people pick Ed Belfour ahead of him, but Dominic Hasek. Dominic Hasek, I talk about individuality. I talk about being unique. I talk about, all that stuff. Well, Dominic Hasek was it, man. You just knew, you never know. He's creative. You never knew what he was going to do. Like, I loved everything about him. And I remember growing up in the 80s, and hearing that the Blackhawks had drafted some kid in like 83 from Czechoslovakia, and he was the best goalie in the world, but we never knew if he was going to be able to make it to the U.S. And I remember as a kid hearing this, and then it happens. Hasek shows up, and he didn't start off hot. I think he needed to learn how to live in North America, navigate North America and all that stuff. He was still fairly young when he came over. But, I mean, he was so good. I mean, he was even so good that first year. His Brian's gear, that year when they were in the playoffs, that gear is beautiful. That should be in a museum somewhere. I'm sure it is. But, it should be in more museums. Yeah, it should be in more museums. His gear was beautiful. The red, white, and black Brian's gear that he had. And then Belfour had his Brian's gear. Like, they were the two best-looking goalies in the NHL. And it's not even debatable at that time. They had the coolest-looking gear, and they were both so good. But I understood at the time, like, you couldn't trade Belfour. He won all the awards. The fans would have revolted, and they couldn't afford to keep Hasek. They probably would have lost him to free agency. So, like, you had to try and recoup for one of the guys. Sure, someone would have probably tried to trade for Ed Belfour, but you were probably not going to get equal.
Nothing.
You weren't going to get equal back.
No.
And Hasek was kind of still an unknown, and they really didn't get much. I mean, Christian Rutu aside and Stefan Beauregard aside, like, it turned into what it turned into, and but Hasek, man, that guy, and then he went to Detroit, which is heartbreaking because he goes to Detroit and does so well in Detroit. But I've always been kind of a closet Buffalo Sabres fan. I don't know why, but part of that was Hasek playing there. I just rooted for the guy. I wanted the guy to do well. He's like, I loved everything about the guy. I wanted to be like him, but ironically enough, when I play, I look more like Belfour. So I don't know what it is, but yeah, Dominic Hasek, that's my number 2 as far as like my favorites of all time. What about
Yeah,
you?
Dominic came on the scene, and I'm like, man, this guy looks like he needs a sandwich. Like he didn't weigh anything. He was skinny. He just looked like a dork, right? He was this nerdy, but man, he was all business. He really was flopper, flipping around, crazy. I mean, you like, oh, he's down now. He stopped it. How did he stop that? Like,
Yeah, and he like
what is
some
he doing?
unconventional things like reaching
No,
around.
just
Goalies
like,
that didn't.
what do you-
Goalies never did that.
No.
But
Hell,
Dominic did.
I threw a 2-pad stack a couple years ago in Mississippi at a rat hockey session and blew their mind. Nobody knew what the hell that was. That was one of the funniest. They're like, oh, yep, never seen that before.
I love pulling.
What is that?
I love pulling one of those out on a back door every once in a while. Pull a 2-pad stack out. Yeah.
Little stick. Like, wait a minute, yeah, bringing it back. All right, my number 2, New York Rangers, Mike Richter.
Can't hit on any of these. Yeah.
Loved Mike Richter. Richter was another one that single-handedly helped the '94 Cup team. Team USA goaltender, stood on his head for Team USA. Had the cool red, white, and blue Vaughns, like the Vaughn legacies. Like I think I loved all the legacy goalies that were out there. It was like, man, another one, extremely fast glove and kick saves. Another one just moved. He moved well. A short goalie, but played big. You know, a lot of these goalies had to play bigger. A lot of them, too, I think, if I recall right, had, like Darren Pang, wore bigger shoulder pads to make them look bigger and to cover a little more space. But luckily enough, though, he had a great team. He had a great D and great forwards around him. That was a really, really good team. That was when you're playing, you know, Sega or Nintendo, and you're probably going to be the New York Rangers or the Blackhawks at that time. Like, and the Rangers are my team from the East. If there's a team from the East that I'm picking ever to watch, it's going to be the Rangers, just because from that nostalgia. I remember, you remember when they used to have over in Chicago Ridge Mall, they had Merle Harmon's Fanfare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually got my dad to buy me a New York Rangers jersey. I got a blank Rangers jersey, and I still. Now, Barrett doesn't fit all that great now, but would I want Richter, Leach, or Messier on that jersey? But yeah, Mike Richter.
Steve Larmer. I say Steve Larmer.
Oh, you're going Larms? No, man, I can't. That's almost blasphemous. Jeez.
Stanley Cup champion Steve Larmer.
I forgot Grandpa played for the Rangers. Shit. Oh man.
And won a cup there.
He did. Good for him, though. Good for him. And anybody who left here. Everybody that left here that won a cup, good for them. Eddie, good for them. But yeah, Richter. He was definitely one I looked up to and kind of and took a piece of the playing style with as well.
I can't.
Great helmet too. Another iconic helmet too. The Statue of Liberty, the Rangers. Yeah. You know, you can't. Lundqvist came close to kind of pull. Actually, so it's just Durkin too. I mean, but man, he started it. He started that whole Statue of Liberty helmet looking thing. But you know, not a big fan of New York City. But you know, that is what it is.
Yeah. All right.
Number two.
Let's get down to
number one.
No, there's your number two. Now we're
that was my
number one.
Yeah.
Well, anyone who knows me is going to know this answer. Anyone watching who knows me, who's grown up around me, knows me for any length of time. My favorite goalie of all time is Mr. Mike Vernon from the Calgary Flames. And I know it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to everybody. Growing up, I first started watching hockey. The first Stanley Cup final that I watched was the 86 Cup final, rookie Mike Vernon against rookie Patrick Waugh in the Stanley Cup final. And I really liked Calgary Flames. I liked their uniforms. I liked the story. I liked the whole how Steve Smith scored on his own goalie to then catapult Calgary down, further into the playoffs. Loved the whole thing about it. I was, 6th, 7th grade at the time. In the goalie, his name is Mike Vernon. I just latched onto him. Mike Vernon was my guy. He was acrobatic. He's a smaller goalie, 5'9" on a good day, probably closer to 5'7". But he did the splits, which was something you didn't see a lot of in that day, and he did it often, which was very acrobatic. I loved that about him. And then I just love the Calgary Flames. I could go on and name the entire team. Both cup teams that they had. But Mike Vernon was my guy. Now then I was conflicted when he got traded to Detroit. I was still a fan of Mike Vernon, and if he did well, that's cool. I like that. But there's no way I was rooting for the Detroit Red Wings. So that was kind of a period where I kind of backed off a little. He was still my favorite player, but I kind of that was kind of when I kind of moved back into Blackhawks land, and started with Belfour and Hasek. That was right around that same period of time. So, but Mike Vernon's my guy. I wore number 30 for a long time. I have pictures of my first setup of me playing as a 15-year-old kid at the SIA Men's League. I was 15 years old playing goalie for them. Couldn't even drive yet. And all my gear, I have the red Calgary jersey, Vernon on the back, all the helmet. I look like a left-handed Mike Vernon out there. I was nowhere near as good. In fact, I sucked. I was terrible at that time, but I looked good at least. So yeah, Mike Vernon's my guy. I hope at some point in time we might be able to get him. I know his my boy over at Beer League Goalie, Joe Drennan. He interviewed Matt Vernon, Mike's son. So maybe at some point in time we could have Matt or Mike or both on. That would be kind of one of those things. That I have on my bucket list is to get to interview Mike Vernon. So Mike Vernon, that's my number one.
I somehow knew that. And it wasn't which version of Mike Vernon. Was it the Detroit Mike Vernon? It was definitely gonna be the Calgary Flames Mike Vernon.
Yeah, he played Vernon for the Calgary Flames twice. He actually came back
twice, right?
So,
yeah. When he was a little older,
he played for Florida. He played for San Jose. I mean, he was my guy, man. I got my brother a while back got me a Mike Vernon signed puck, and it's up on my shelf. It's one of my things. Mike Vernon was my guy.
My number one,
Pete. Number one,
Ed Belfour. So Eddie was probably the real reason I played. He was his helmet, his style, like you said, that open. Come at me, bro style. It was like he was the most aggressive goaltender I've ever seen in my life. Just amazing. He was, coming from the University of North Dakota, already an established player coming through. It's like, whoa, what's he going to do? He didn't really have a great first start. I know he came in with the Saginaw Gears, which I've got a Saginaw Gears Belfour card, which is pretty cool, autographed. But yeah, and I had the privilege of going to some of the Blackhawks camps with Belfour, and it was funny too because there was one time that it was Brendan. No, it was I don't know, it was either Brendan Shanahan or Brett Hull. It was Hull, and it was in the evening. I was with the men, and that was my style. I mean, I played like Eddie. He's like, "What do you think you're Eddie Belfour?" I said, "No." He's like, "It's okay. I'll go ask him." So, and Eddie was there that night too. So it was one of those just cool nights. But man, I'm actually looking at a bunch. My wall is covered in Belfour stuff. I've got my Belfour stick on the wall, and it's just like he brought the excitement back to the Chicago Stadium. He brought that roar, and that was really when I started going. I mean, we were full bore as Hawk fans. That place was so loud, the old stadium, and he'd make that save, and the Eddie chants would just ring, and
he came in at such the perfect time, when they were doing the Gulf War, and he had the American Eagle flag on there, and it was just a whole how things are now are just so different. And back then, everyone was very patriotic back then.
Yeah,
it was very and him having the Eagle on there and just coming in and being such a dominant player was it was so perfect. If you were going to write a movie,
that was it.
That was how you would have written it. Yeah. He swoops in, he wins all the awards. He's got this Eagle on there. America's about to go to war. It was the whole package. It was so perfect.
Yeah. And with another great Hawk team. I mean, at the same time, we went to the Cup final against, and got pretty much waxed by Pittsburgh, but it gave
ruined
Chicago
my senior year of
some
high
hope.
school.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, right? But I mean, the team they had right at the same time, Ronick and Chelios, and and Savard came in and out a little bit, and Larmer, and then Amonte kind of came in toward the tail end, and
Suter
It's
and
just
Smith.
Smith, Keith Brown. You know, they had a D, they had a defensive core, and Eddie wasn't scared to drop the gloves on anybody, including Bob Probert. So it was like you look for those St. Louis, Detroit, Toronto games because it's like it's gonna hit the fan tonight. It's there's no joke. So yeah, Eddie Belfour all day. Just my favorite all-time goaltender.
And like how lucky are we that we got to grow up when Ed Belfour and Dominic Hasek were coming through? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
even to jump a sport, Jeff,
yeah.
to be at the same time with Michael Jordan.
Yes,
100%. In our town. I mean,
100%.
It's like we really had it made in the sports world. You know,
and winter sports, we at that point in time, winter sports, Chicago, man, it was a great time for winter sports. Even the Bears were okay still back then.
Yeah,
they were kind of on the down. They were coming down, but like they were pretty good as well. And yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Jordan thing because that was Jordan was. I don't like basketball. I'm not a basketball guy, but I guarantee you, for those years Jordan was in town, I was watching basketball. Because, what is he going to do next? You know,
I tell people all the time here too because and so for every once in a while I'll drive Uber, right? So and I have conversations with people all over and like, oh, Chicago, and when did you when? And then we'll talk about Jordan. I said, and it wasn't that we were cocky at the time, because I remember,
maybe
a few times it was like, hey, are you going to the are you going to go to the rally in Grant Park? No, we'll go next year.
Yeah,
we'll go next year because we knew they were going to break that team up, and it was going to happen again next year, and it was up to them if they weren't going to go or not. So yeah, I mean between the NBA, our NBA Bulls, and the Blackhawks, it was like, man, it was a great time. And then even at that point too, the Chicago Wolves kind of trickled in. So and they got some goalies that were kind of fun. I mean, you had
Wendell Young.
Why is it a
general manager Wendell Young?
Wendell Young, and you also had what was his name from Team USA? He came in. Oh
Ray
man,
LeBlanc.
Ray LeBlanc? That's it. Yeah.
Well, he was.
And that was a nice little.
Too.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. I remember going to the. Did you ever get to go to the Canada Cup games at the stadium?
No.
We went to the Canada Cup games, and that was pretty great. When you see, you got your goaltenders for Team Canada are Ed Belfour, Patrick Waugh, and Martin Brodeur. And then you look over Team USA, you got John Van Beesbrook, Mike Richter. Damn, I don't remember. It might have been John Casey. At the time, I'm not even sure. I can't remember. But those, man, it was such a great time. It really was.
It was.
But those, great top five on both sides, man.
Yeah. The only thing that really trumped that, I mean, we got to live during the 3-cup era. Like
we did.
Like for hockey fans, that was it. Like I almost shed a tear in 2010 when they
I did,
because my heart was so broken. My heart was so broken in 1992, my senior year of high school. The Blackhawks were like the best team by far, and like they were going to win the cup. They were rolling through the playoffs. They had Belfour. They had all these names. Like this was going to be it. Just like, how everyone remembers the 2010 Blackhawks. It was very, very similar, except for the goalies were established stars.
Yeah.
They didn't have, an unknown in there. But, like, they were going to, and then Pittsburgh just came in and mopped the floor with them. And it broke my heart. I couldn't ever root for Pittsburgh. I hated them. Like, Yager, I mean, I respect the hell out of Yager, and I respect the hell out of Lemieux. But, like, I hated them. I hated them for breaking my heart. They broke my heart.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt there. That sucked.
Now,
it really did.
Now, for the third period of this podcast, and we're going to make it short. We're trying to keep it an hour, and we're already in an hour 10. So, most people, again, I'm going to have to go through it, but most people are going to know who I'm going to say for this. And I'm going to start here. The goalie that I hated, or the goalie that I still hate. There aren't a lot of them, but there were ones that I disliked because they were good against the Blackhawks or whatever. Like when Greg Millen used to you could go out there and stone the Blackhawks, and he couldn't stop a puck against anybody else but the Blackhawks. But anyway, the goalie that I hate, Cristobal Huey, and anyone who's like listened to me for any period of time, and I've been doing podcasts for well over 10 years. Cristobal Huey, I hated him. I hated the move at the time, and the reason I hated it was because they had Hobby Bullen when they signed him, and they had Corey Crawford come into the system at that point in time, which would have been a perfect time to go with a Crawford and Hobby Bullen duo.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. But they brought in Huey, which then held Crawford back, which I hated. I hated also that they were trying to play Huey ahead of Hobby Bullen because I liked Hobby Bullen. So, the first year they played him and he was okay. But that cup run year, he was historically one of the worst goalies in the NHL at that point in time. He was one of the rare goalies in the entire league to have a save percentage under 900 to be a regular starting goalie. Like, they literally had to put an unknown free agent goalie from Europe that was driving Zambonis 2 years earlier to come in and backstop this juggernaut team that's about to go win the Stanley Cup in Niemi because Cristobal Huey sucks so bad. Now, part of this is I hated that they made that move and they signed him. But I hated him as well because he was terrible. Like, if he was good, then I would have been like, well, I hated the signing, but it worked out. It didn't work out. Like, they had to banish him a year later over to Europe just to get his money off the books because they needed to make more money, make more space for other players to try and re-sign other players. He was so bad they banished him. He's one of the only players in probably my 50 years on this planet with the Blackhawks that was actually on the team the year before and banished over to Europe like that, like a regular player making a decent amount of money, not just some prospect. Like, he was just that bad. I hate Cristobal Huey. I really do. I will go off 10 times like this, but yeah, Huey's my guy. I hate him. What about you? You got a goalie you hated? You absolutely hate?
I've got.
Besides me,
I've got three. No, I like you. I never really get to play. We never got to play against each other per se.
Yeah.
Alongside in weird ways, but no, never hated you. No. Patrick Waugh. And it wasn't for what he did; it's for what he said or how he said things or what. I think is his off ice mouth, for lack of better terms. His quote to Jeremy Roenick, "Oh, I can't hear you. I've got two Stanley Cups in my ears." After Roenick torched him on the one game, that was kind of like this guy's a douche. That one flared me off. Another one, a story with Troy Murray. When Troy Murray he went to the Avalanche, just before his career was over, and they had their cup run, the playoffs or whatever, and he had even had a story where Waugh said, "I'll stop everything. Just put the puck in the net." And it was like, yeah, I mean, I get the confidence, but at the same time, it's just like that. That's not how I was as a player, I guess. It wasn't. It was so. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. However, my honorable mention of hate is I always thought Tim Thomas was a dick. I just was not a fan of Tim Thomas at all. Just a weird cat. Like, something wasn't wired right upstairs. And if I went current, let's just stick with the hatred of the Blues and Jordan Binnington.
Yeah,
I am not a
Binnington. Him and his whole we talked about this.
He fit throwing. What a goof! Like,
Burton and I talked about this early on. I hate his fake tough guy act that he puts on.
Oh, he's not. He's the worst.
If you want to be a tough guy, get in there and start throwing some hands. If you're not going to throw some hands, don't stand behind the ref or behind your players and shout and stuff. Like, back it up, And he's always been this fake tough guy and throwing these tantrums. And anyone who's played with me is probably finding this very ironic because I'm a mouthy goalie, but I play in beer league. I'm not a pro goalie. Like, back it up. If you're gonna say something, back it up. That's all I got to say. Like, if I say something, I'll back it up.
Yeah.
Even though I'm gonna get my ass kicked, I'm still gonna back it up.
Yeah. I'm a shin slasher, pusher, puncher. I'm gonna do something stupid probably. But here I got a
I
funny
have.
twist.
I've done plenty stupid.
I've done stupid too. I've done stupid too, and paid for it. But I had a thought earlier. Yeah, so we grew up in a great era, right? However, if you were just and not for any reason whatsoever, if you had 3 goaltenders that you could have been able to watch and learn from, who would they have been?
That I didn't watch, or
That you didn't get to watch. I mean, I'm talking before we started playing. Like we're talking like 70s, maybe 60s goalies.
Okay, so guys, I didn't get to see that didn't shape me.
Right.
Okay.
That we didn't get to
first,
be like turn on TV and be like, watch this. Oh man, let's watch that. Yeah.
One would be Tony Esposito. I didn't really get to see him play. I didn't start playing hockey till probably 85, 86ish. He was already gone by then. He's a lefty. He's the most famous lefty goalie. Like, Tony O would probably be it for me as far as like guys that I would really love to watch play. Oh, geez. You put me on the spot here. I don't even know if I can name a couple other goalies. Glenn Hall. I mean, from the Blackhawks. Yeah. I mean, he's legendary. He holds the record for like most consecutive starts by a goalie that will never be broken ever, just because you can't physically do it anymore. So yeah, Glenn Hall, I'd like to see him, and maybe Dryden, maybe Cheevers, maybe probably Cheevers because of his mask. The whole mask situation with him. He was one of the guys that was the first to wear the mask, and he wore it with the stitches on it.
Stitches
to signify every time it saved him from stitches. Yeah. So maybe those 3. What about you?
Yeah. My 3 would have been Ken Dryden, Gary Cheevers, and Tony Esposito. Yeah, absolutely. Because those are 3 of the best. I mean, it's. And it goes back, and it's kind of funny because, like I said, I've looked at a lot of top 10s, top 50s, just out of curiosity, and so here's the top 5 out of Bleacher. Number 5 was Ken Dryden. Well, actually, number 6 was Dominic Hasek. 5 was Dryden. 4 was Sawchuk. 3 was Patrick Waugh. 2 was Marty Brodeur. Number 1 was Jacques Plante. So. I can agree with their top 6. There's some other stuff we'll get into another day that's a little weird.
Yeah.
But I had thought about that. I'm like, man, it would have been cool to actually turn on the TV and watch these guys play.
Or see them live or whatever. Yeah.
Or see them. Oh God, absolutely see them live. And it was funny. My mom and dad actually, they went one or the other. Went to school with Bannerman's wife, and so they kind of knew Bannerman a little bit. So
my first favorite Blackhawks goalie, Bob Sauve.
Oh, really? He's on that list too. He's high up on the list. However, there's another one in the mix in the 80s.
That was the first goalie. Like, I liked Bannerman, I liked him, but I wanted to go a little bit different, and I went with Sauve. He was my guy when I first tried playing goalie. He was the guy, and then Vernon kind of came in and took all my attention away. But yeah,
he's number 2 on the top 100. So just if you were wondering this evening, but
number 2,
I'm number 92. Yeah, 90. That's way the hell down there. But we had great. So we've basically talked about our 90s.
Yeah.
But we've got our 2000s, our 80s, our quick hit goaltenders. But yeah. So we've got a lot of stuff for another day. That's for sure. And we really kind of hit the tip of the iceberg and stuff. And
we're gonna try and keep the. Yeah, we're gonna try and keep this thing going. Right now it's kind of a slow time. The league's just getting rolling, but we're gonna try and get it. At least 2 a month. We're gonna try to get some momentum. We're gonna do things a little differently here. Of course, it's not Blackhawk centric. We're gonna be doing league wide stuff, and we're gonna be doing minor league stuff, and we're gonna have probably some people that you could try their products. Hopefully. We're gonna have things like that going on. Pete, you got some other stuff going on too.
I got a lot going on.
Anything you could talk about. I know there's things you could talk about. There's things you can't talk about. Anything you can talk about, you could just kind of give us an idea what you're going to be doing sometime this season.
Yeah, so I think the way you pick me up, we talk and things like that, and I bounce stuff off you, but I want to do goaltending podcast myself, and you can see underneath my link is Inside the Blue Paint. That's going to be coming out very soon. I have a lot of guests coming on. Last hockey season, I was in pro hockey in a front office in the Federal Prospect Hockey League in Baton Rouge with the Baton Rouge Zydeco. Learned a lot of things, met a lot of great people, had a good time there. It also met a lot of players coming in and out of the city. And I'm not too far from one of the other teams in Biloxi, Mississippi. So there's a lot of those guys from that league that I still talk to that want to come on the show. Also, I was picked up by Bench Minor. They made that official today. Actually, I'm going to be on a panel of 3 different guys, 2 guys from the Seawolves from Mississippi. We're going to be covering Biloxi, Baton Rouge, and the new Monroe Moccasins team. So all 3 of those teams, we have 2 in Louisiana, one in Mississippi. We're going to be covering the South. Also, one of my old broadcast partner. I did do some color commentary last year. Enjoyed it a lot. Our play-by-play guy is amazing. Good kid. Also a hockey player. And we're going to do something called Hockey Times Down South. Also covering those 3 teams and some stuff in the SPHL and things to that nature. So, yeah, man, there's a lot going on. And I also own my own business down here as well. So between that and, real life and everything else, it's going to be a ride. It's going to be a juggling match. But and I'm thankful, Jeff, you brought me onto this show because I think we're going to have a lot of fun. We got a lot to share. I think I'm at that point in my life and career where I want to share and give back things. Like I said, my playing days are going to be few and far between. So why not give what we've got still? Well, we can still give things in our head. Yeah. So right. Yeah,
it's awesome, man. So make sure you follow Pete on Twitter. You can see his handle there, the Blue Paint 40 on Twitter. And I'll be sharing out all the links and stuff like that. But this is gonna be a fun year. Like you said, you're busy. I'm gonna be busy too. My kid plays youth hockey, and he's busy a lot. I try to stay on our other podcast, which is a Chicago Hockey Rinkcast about the Blackhawks. I have our other division, which is the Colorado division, headed up by Brennan Vogt, and he is kicking ass over there. Like, they're doing a great job writing about everything, recapping games and the entire Colorado Avalanche division. So if you can head over to the-rink.com, you can actually read their stuff. You can read our Blackhawks stuff. We're going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing this podcast because I'm the host, and I'm going to be, periodically getting in on the other Rinkcasts and stuff like that. So we'll do that. We do want to give a shout out to your buddy from Hockey Bomb.
Oh, Biscuit Bomb. So yeah, Biscuit Bomb, Steve Reyes. They're coincidentally, I totally forgot to. Those guys out in California are bringing me on their podcast as well. Hockey Night Insider. Don't know what nights those are going to be. I think they said Monday night sometimes. They also got the Hockey Dojo out there in California, and there's some big hockey in California is huge. I didn't even have a clue how big it really was. We'll get to that one day too. But yeah, Biscuit Bomb is a all natural organic CBD topical. That's, man, I swear by it. We thought I had a torn rotator cuff, just real quick on it. And it wound up being, I was in a roller hockey tournament in Denton, Texas. I got deked out of my shorts, stretched out long on my stick side, which is my right shoulder. And when I landed awkwardly, but I was like, no big deal, right? It was just a little sore, no biggie. I really didn't play much the rest of the tournament because I'm a sissy. But it come to find out, I knocked my shoulder out of joint by 2 inches. And I went to rehab, and man, this stuff, as bad as my shoulder felt when I put it on, and I use about 1,000 milligrams, which is still a low dose. Man, it within minutes, you don't have any pain, which is scary, but it's good to manage it. So yeah, shout out. I really strongly support those guys with Biscuit Balm. So yeah, it's we'll have some stuff about them too soon.
Yeah. So. Well, I guess that'll wrap us up. We're a little bit over today, so I think you guys are going to start to see that Pete and I like to talk, so we're going to probably go a little bit over on every episode. We're going to try to keep it to an hour, but we might go a little bit over because some of these topics may get a little heated because I don't know that Pete and I are going to always agree on some of these topics. So we may get into some heated debates, and I think that's good. Like, it's entertaining. So, like, if we both agree on everything, that would not be fun. So, like, I think we're gonna have a good time this year, and I want to keep this going. And so, I guess we're gonna wrap things up here. Thanks to all of you for listening and watching this episode. This is the Net Perspective. I get you. You can get on all your hockey podcatchers. You can also find the live stream right now on Facebook and on YouTube at The Rink Official. And that's where we do the live ones. Twitter is now getting flaky on me, and we couldn't actually live stream on Twitter because Elon made that feature pay. So I don't want to do that. So anyway, you can see us the live video versions on our Facebook page and our YouTube page. All of them will be there, along with all of our other podcasts that we do. So. I guess with all that being said, we're coming up on an hour 30, so we're going to get out of here. But for me, Jeff Osborne, at Pocket Hostel or Gatekeeper, and for my buddy Pete Fricano over here at the Blue Paint 40. Until next episode, get in net.
Hey, guys.